Shop Talk Live, episode number 238. So, we all know that there's two parts to the intro. The part where I sell you on how great this episode is, and the part where I sell you on something. This episode is an hour long of Tim Coleman talking about veneers, and that's it. You gotta listen to this episode. I'm incredibly lucky because I get to hang out with the world's greatest woodworkers, and if I'm doing my job well, it feels like you're hanging out with the world's greatest woodworkers too. This is one of those episodes where you're hanging out with one of the world's greatest woodworkers. So now the second part. This one's really big and exciting for me. If you're an Unlimited member, you now have access to all of our digital download plans. In the Taunton store, we have digital downloads of plans that you find in the magazine, but with more information, more views, more measurements, and with most of them, there's also a SketchUp file included as well. Now, for Unlimited members, that is a part of your membership. So head on over to finewoodworking.com. On the homepage, scroll down a little bit, and you will see the new plan library. It's dozens of plans. You can download them and build them to your heart's content. It's something that the Unlimited members have been asking for, and we heard you, we listened, and we added it, and I'm really excited about it. I hope you will be too. All right, on with the episode after a word from our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by Maverick Abrasives. Maverick is a family-run company that's been making sanding belts and discs for woodworkers in the USA for 30 years. With Maverick, you're buying factory direct, so you're likely to save a lot of money. I just looked around my shop at the various abrasives that I use, and I did the math. If I bought everything directly from Maverick, I would save around 40% on my sanding discs and belts. Maverick has all of the popular size belts and discs in stock on their website, but they can also make any custom sizes that you might need. Check out their website at maverickabrasives.com or give one of their owners, Garrett, a call at 714-646-3299 and use the code FINEWOODWORKING. That's one word, FINEWOODWORKING, for 10% off your order. Again, that's maverickabrasives.com and the code is FINEWOODWORKING.
Yeah, Tim, you've always basically worked from home, but for us who've been sort of kind of locked into that office culture mindset to be working from home, and like you said, you can take a walk at lunch if you want to, or you can go out into your shop whenever you want to, and no one will know, and that's a good thing.
No, it is, I know for some people, they really need that separation of going to a place, which is their workplace.
Yeah.
And it can feel that way sometimes, but it doesn't matter to me whether my workshop was, 10 miles away or right next door. I'd still be thinking about whatever project is going on. And so at least having the workshop at home, I can actually go act on those thoughts.
Yes.
But I work, fairly long days, but not it depends on the work of the day. And weekends, I work most of the time, but not, I seldom feel overworked, because it gets broken up into doses and kind of, components of a project. I can break it down into, okay, this is a 2-hour or a 3-hour, thing that has to be done. So I work until that is done, and then I'll take a little break.
Cool.
That's one nice thing about being at home is that you can let the glue dry.
Or not.
But it's, you could go out, throw a coat of finish on something, head right back in. Like weekend for me is finishing time, because you just slap a coat of finish on, go spend more time with the family, or do, mow the yard or whatever. And that's one thing that I would miss if I didn't have the workshop at home, is those quick little jaunts out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. turning the heat down. Yeah. Well, sometimes I got to have it warm for gluing or finishing or whatever, and then turn it down.
How do you heat your shop?
I've got a direct vent propane heater. It's by Veneer is the company. It works great. When I built this place 20 years ago, they didn't have mini splits and that sort of heating system, which is probably what I would have done because it's a concrete slab foundation, and I have to run a dehumidifier, in the summer. So it'd be nice to have the heating and cooling in one unit, but I can always retrofit.
That's interesting. This is something that I only think of with the luthier part of my mind. You do keep track of humidity in your workshop?
Well, the slab, you can see that it's kind of sweating, not liquid, but discoloration from just the humidity, and it definitely gets pretty humid here. And I would love to be able to have the doors open, for just fresh air, but I have to keep it closed with the dehumidifier on most of the. And if I'm doing, especially like oil type finishes, then I have to sometimes bring a second dehumidifier in. To really keep the moisture down, because it just takes forever for things to dry.
Mike, you don't. Well, you run your AC nonstop in the warmer weather.
Well, I mean, it's on. It's probably a little too humid. Still, I would like to get a dehumidifier. I have a concrete slab. It's in a 2-car garage, but I put sleepers down, put rigid insulation, vapor barrier, and then a plywood floor on top of that. And I think that helps quite a bit. The other thing is that the garage, it's basically built on a slope, so they had to fill up to a flat level. So I'm not really getting, any true, groundwater or anything that's being wicked up through that concrete slab. Do you worry about things getting too dry in the winter, Tim?
No, that hasn't been an issue.
Okay.
I do. Well, I guess it's just general practice, but especially in the winter, veneering, when pulling stuff out of the press and making sure that the panels are either completely covered, so that there's not exposed on one side to humidity changes, or I'll put it in such a way that it's got some battens underneath it so that there's airflow all around it.
Cool.
So that's something the effects of that are more noticeable in the winter.
Well, that was a pro transition, Tim, into our first question.
Just like we did in rehearsal, right?
Yeah. This is why we just start rolling, because sometimes it's like, wow, all right, that's the intro, and now we're transitioned. All right, so let's answer some questions. And I had mentioned earlier, before we started rolling, that some of these are from 2018, but I have kept them because there is one person who should be answering these questions in my mind. And
we don't even need any reader questions, because I have enough questions for Tim for days.
Well, last time Tim was on the show, it was just when we were doing guests for like segments, and Tim was on for maybe 10 minutes, and there was one article that came out of that. So, Tim, we expect 4 to 5 articles out of this episode.
Let me
Pressure's
go get my
on.
notebook. Let me show you what I'm working on.
Okay, so this first question, we have 2 veneering questions, and they're similar. The first one's from Patrick, who we hung out with in San Diego, Mike. He was, I think he was in Chris Gochner's class at Hands-On San Diego.
Okay.
Patrick does killer work. I'm working on a large, 30-inch wide, 8-inch high, 12-inch deep arts and crafts cabinet for a client and had a question about general best practice for using shop-sawn veneers when only one side shows. For example, the back of this cabinet. What is the best way to balance the solid 1/8 inch or less show veneers when the back won't be seen? It seems like a waste to use shop-sawn veneers on the back. With shop-sawn veneer, does the veneer on the opposite side of the plywood core need to be the same thickness, or would a brown backer veneer be enough? It's all quarter sawn white oak with solid face frames, shelves, and doors, and rift oak plywood sides, top and bottom. So, this is this is one of those questions that, as I'm reading it, I'm going, oh, I obviously know the answer to this already, and then it goes a little bit further. It's like, oh no, there's so. What do you think, Tim? Back of a cabinet.
Well, I think that the fact that that Patrick is considering many options, first of all, means that he doesn't care all that much what it looks like. The important thing is that when you open the cabinet, you see the back panel and it's consistent with the level of work of the rest of the interior of the cabinet, you know that most cabinets are going to be against a wall, so I don't have any philosophical reasons why you can't just have a ordinary back, meaning not having the same veneer as the show face. Back panels are typically fairly thin and somewhat flexible, so you're not. So they can bend into place easily. So if that panel is a little bit warped in the creating of it, then fastening it into the back of the case would kind of pull it into line. The thing is, gluing only on one face under any circumstances, and particularly if it's thin material, it's going to warp even more. So to me, the question is, how do you get as flat a panel as possible? I would probably just veneer both sides with the same, you don't have to use your best shop-sawn veneer. I mean, I usually, when I'm sawing veneer, I'll saw up some boards that are going to be used for backer for either the current project or future projects. So, I have something available. It might be poplar, it might be, some other mild wood. And, it doesn't take much to, put together a panel, a veneer panel, edge gluing the pieces. So that's probably what I would do. If I were to just veneer on one side of something, I would use a polyurethane glue because it won't introduce moisture into the glue, the veneering process. And I actually use polyurethane glue quite a bit.
Really?
And we can get into that with one of the upcoming questions.
Well, you're here. You're here. It's funny because I thought no one used polyurethane glue. And then I find out, well, Craig Thibodeau uses a lot of polyurethane glue. I see you use polyurethane glue.
Tim Coleman
I think, and all of a sudden I'm going, maybe I need to go get some polyurethane glue. I mean, those two right there, that's about all it takes for my mind to be swayed.
Yes.
Well, and it's really a question of, what you're using it for, what applications. And I don't use polyurethane glue for any assembly. I use it strictly for veneer work. And I do a lot of veneering on top of solid wood with the grain running the same direction.
Yeah.
And that's something that I started doing probably 10 years ago or so.
So when you do that, Tim, are you only veneering one face, or are you still veneering both faces?
Typically, I'm veneering just one face.
Okay.
And the polyurethane is just ideal.
Cool.
in those situations, because it's not. I mean, when you think about veneering on solid wood, I mean, the rules of veneering both sides don't necessarily apply, because you're laminating onto the same material.
Right.
So if you can manage the moisture issues of adhering the veneer, then in the end you just have a thicker piece of wood.
Okay. So when you're talking about shop-sawn veneer, like in my mind, I'm thinking 1/8 inch thick veneer, but you're probably going thinner than that as well?
I don't. I seldom work with anything thicker than a 1/16.
Okay.
1/16 to me is anything over that. Well, Mike, I mean, we're talking about veneering on solid wood, so you certainly can go thicker. But since I cut all my veneer right around a 1/16, then that's what I'm using. But you certainly could do something thicker, if for whatever reason you would want for. But I'm also the thinner you go, the less you notice that there's a veneer on solid wood, because if you have a 1/16 inch layer there, and you soften that edge once the panel is all together, you don't notice a separation as much between because I usually use the same species, unless you're trying for an effect of a lighter veneer on top of a dark substrate for a design effect. But if I'm doing all the same wood, then whereas if you had an 1/8 inch thick veneer on there, you would see that there's a layer of veneer here.
Right.
And
so
that could
why? So what's the reason for going veneer of the same species on top of a solid panel? Like, are we talking like a tabletop or something like that?
Because you have control over the look of the surface. So I can do book matches if I want, or any other kind of matches. Whereas if you're the solid wood, building something from solid wood boards, unless you really have a nice flitch of something and you want book matches, then you're looking at a top that's going to be built up out of boards that are more random.
Sure.
Which is a fine look as well, but so much of what I do, working with the matching patterns and even I've done some where the pieces of veneer cross slightly. They're wedge shapes, but the grain still all goes generally in the same direction, so you can do that on top of the solid wood.
You had done, was that a recent piece you did at a cabinet? It almost had sort of like a cracked ice, almost parquetry pattern on the door panels. That
was on a plywood substrate. The pieces that changed direction, considerably. So there was, they didn't orient generally in the same direction.
Right.
And, what's your substrate of choice? Baltic birch or?
I have lots of plywoods that sometimes it's depending on the thickness I need. So if I need some substrate thickness that's 5/8 of an inch thick, then I see what I've got. So I typically have some MDF, which I don't use all that much, veneer core plywood called Europly, which is comes in 4x8 sheets. It's a multi-ply veneer that's made kind of like the Baltic birch, but tends to be a little flatter. I have a lot of 1/8 inch plywood that I sometimes build up panels from that, or I might use the 1/8 inch on top of MDF just to kind of build up a thickness. I'd create my own lumber core sometimes, which I've found to be some of the flattest material you can create. And I did an article a number of years ago for the magazine that talked about some of my process for creating lumber core panels. And what else do I use? Yeah, that about covers it. And flat plywood, I think is finding flat plywood is the bane of every woodworker. You have this stuff, you take care of it, you put it, you stack it properly in your shop and do everything right, and then you pull it out to use it, and it's it's got enough of a warp that it's going to cause problems. If you're making two flat doors, then you're battling it in some way the whole way through. So I've got a big dining table I'm doing right now, a large top, and I had just that situation where I went to grab this panel of Europly, and it was pretty darn warped, and it wasn't before, a couple of years ago.
Wow.
So what I do often, and what I did in this situation, is I'll kerf the kind of concave side. So I'll run, often it's just kind of warped in one direction.
Yes.
So I'll run just a series of kerfs. They might be spaced apart by 4 inches or 6 inches in some case, or kind of randomly spaced depending on, and they go, on a 3/4 inch thick panel, they go in about 5/8. So you leave about 1/8 of an inch.
Do you use like a circ saw or something like that?
I'll do it on usually just my table saw.
Oh, okay.
But having a track saw of some kind would be ideal for something like that. And what it does is it just kind of relaxes the panel, takes all the tension out, and then sometimes I'll fill those with little fillets, and then veneer right over it. And because I'm using bandsaw and veneer, you're bridging those grooves.
Right.
What would you fill them with?
Just poplar or something.
Okay, so
you're
not pouring resin in there or anything.
No, you really don't have to. And if I can, I don't fill them with anything. Especially if sometimes that panel is then going to be cross veneered before the face veneer goes on.
I was going to ask before you mentioned kerfing a panel, is if you have something with a slight bow, do you try to, throw that in your vacuum press, veneering each side, and will that straighten it out? Or is there enough tension in that panel where it's going to spring back on you?
It's almost impossible to get it out, I would say. Cool. If it's a fairly thin panel, maybe. But typically, there's no way of really getting that out. The tension is there.
Right.
So you had mentioned something that I've been thinking about lately. Is you said, MDF is never flat. And for some reason, anytime somebody mentions MDF, they always say, it's really flat. And I think, it's not. When they say that, do you think it's a miscommunication of it's a consistent thickness when people say it's really flat?
No, it's Mike Pekovich flat. It's not Tim Coleman flat.
Well, I think you're right. I think typically they're referring to the consistency of thickness.
Okay.
And I mean, MDF is so heavy too. I mean, I tend to avoid it just for that reason. Although they do make a lightweight product, which is actually really nice.
Yeah.
So when I can, I'll get that. And I just was introduced to another product called Puma Ply, Puma. And that is a veneer core with like an 1/8 inch facing of MDF.
Right, sure.
So you get some of the nice thing about veneer core for panels is, it holds fasteners well. You can screw into it. You can screw into the edge of it. MDF, especially trying to screw into the edge of it, then it doesn't hold up so well, and it splits.
Yeah.
And so this Puma ply, you have the surface, because it's 1/8" MDF. You can orient your face veneer in either direction. You don't have to cross band the top layer of the veneer core. So that I like, to be able to choose whichever direction.
So last time I was in Home Depot, they didn't have Europly and Puma ply. So how do you source this, or how would someone just working in their own shop, how can you get a hold of that stuff?
I get it through Atlantic Plywood is my local supplier, and they probably service your area as well.
Yes, they do. That's where we get it, but not everybody has the truck stopping by, I guess.
Well, they're up here, they've been pretty good about, they didn't used to, but they do now have a minimum, for delivery, which is not bad. It was maybe $300 at the most, is their minimum for delivery. And so I typically just kind of get an order built up. And just get a bunch of things that I know I'll use over the course of a couple of years.
Cool.
So there's other, I would look into those places, but just expect that there's likely to be a minimum order in order for it to be delivered.
I know that Mike, Conway, maybe they get it from Atlantic or something, but if you call them in advance, a lot of good lumber yards will get good plywood shipped in for you, so maybe there's definitely an upcharge or whatever. But when I first started, I didn't have a pickup truck. I didn't have anything. So I would rent a pickup truck from Home Depot, drive 50 miles down to a plywood supplier. And one time I went down, I bought like 15 sheets because I couldn't stomach renting the truck unnecessarily. And I got a whole bad batch of plywood, and it was cheap ply. I was driving 50 miles to get cheap ply at a really good price, and that was a bad mistake. And then it was in my damp basement, and the show veneer was just peeling off. Anytime you did anything with it, it would just peel off. So, I'm to the point where I'm willing to pay a little bit extra to have Conway get the good ply, I guess. So, or whatever local lumberyard.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I asked our local place and our lunchtime lumber yard about the plywood, and they said, no, we don't stock it, but anything you need, let us know and we can get it. So that's another good source. Tim, one sort of like the big question when you talk about 16th-inch shop-sawn veneer, obviously you're jointing a board between each of your bandsaw cuts, I'm guessing, so you have a clean face and a bandsawn face, and then you're not running that second face through the planer at 1/16 of an inch. Do you have a wide belt sander you use? How are we getting our 16th-inch shop-sawn veneers?
So I on the bandsaw, I cut probably close to 3/32 or so. I gauge as I'm going along, and it has a lot to do with the width of the board. So, I can cut up to 14 inches on my saw. I can raise the guides, and I've, on a few occasions, have done that. But typically it's, 8 to 10 inch wide boards. The narrower they are, the more slices I can get before going to the joiner. So if I can, I'll just take a slice and do another one right away, and then maybe go to the joiner. Because I'm always trying to maximize the number of leaves I can get out of a board.
Okay, so you have a veneer off the bandsaw that has two bandsawn faces on it.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I no longer feel guilty.
Well, it depends on your setup, and if your saw is cutting well, you just feel it, and it's there's and that has some to do with setup. It has some to do with the specific material you're working with.
Right.
It has some to do with your attitude, and what kind of mood you're in when you go in there. Are you in a hurry, or are you more relaxed and kind of letting things happen? And fortunately, I do have a small thickness sander.
Okay.
It's a 15-inch wide open end sander.
Yes, right.
Which it's a Grizzly brand, but there's a number of other brands that make something very similar.
Yes.
It's actually a small wide belt sander.
It is.
It's not a
Yep.
drum sander, right?
No.
We have a shop tour of Tim's, and this sander, this thing's a small beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it weighs almost 1,000 pounds. It's
Wow.
a heavy machine, and the belts are you just take off the air, slip out one belt, slip in another one, bring the air back on and turn it on, and you're good to go. So unlike a drum type sander where you have to wind the abrasive paper,
Right.
you're not going to be changing it very often, and the feed rate is really slow on those also. But they do a good job, and they don't take up a lot of room. But this machine, a friend had one who lives a mile and a half away, and I was going over there all the time to sand my veneer.
That's a good friend.
So I eventually got one, and they're not terribly pricey. It's a single phase machine, and it's got a 5-horse motor. So you need to make sure that your wiring is good for something that big, and that you have a breaker that's appropriately sized for a machine that size.
Okay.
And that's about as big a single phase motor as anyone would care to have.
Yeah.
Now, and when you say you turn the air off, turn the air back on, it's actually pneumatics that are
It has
tensioning?
Tensioning and oscillation. The belt, the upper wheel kind of moves gradually back and forth, which makes the belt move back and forth. On the work, not by much, but enough so that you're not likely to get if there's something on the belt that is a problem. And so yes, it operates both those functions.
Do you have to have a large compressor to?
No, it's a job site type compressor,
okay.
and that's fine. It doesn't take a lot of air.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, unlike trying to spray things, with a spray setup, you need a much bigger compressor.
Okay.
So right now I'm channeling the thoughts of our listeners, and they're all thinking the same thing. What kind of bandsaw blade do you use to cut your veneers?
Well, I am using carbide tip blades.
Okay.
I use a blade from Lennox. I've been using them for quite a while. I like the Lennox blades all around. They're just have been consistently good, and I get them through Spectrum Supply. You can go online and find them, and you buy custom cut blades so that whatever the length you need, they will make the blade for you. And there's no minimum. You can just get one blade. So and it's a 1-inch wide carbide tip Lennox Woodmaster CT. They have two tooth configurations. I think one is a 2 tooth per inch, and the other is a 1.5 or a 1.2.
Wow. Okay.
So I use the one with fewer teeth, so the 1.2, because I'm not as interested in what the surface quality is as it comes off the saw. I want as little resistance feeding the work as possible.
Okay.
So fewer teeth means that there's fewer teeth engaged in the work, and so the feed rate is smoother. And I mean, the surface quality is great anyway, but under most circumstances, you're going to be doing something with that surface, hand tooling it once it's been laid down or run through your machines.
Right.
So I like a faster feed rate.
Okay, so you when you say you're looking for as little resistance as possible, that's just feed rate for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Every time I resaw him on this tiny bandsaw, and feed rate goes right out the window. So is it just getting the job done fast for you for feed rate, or is there a quality to a faster feed rate that you're looking for?
I think it's more just a lack of resistance, and so you want to be feeding the work into the blade at the rate that this blade wants to take it.
Okay.
You don't have control over that. The blade controls that, really. So I like to be able to feed it through. I mean, I don't know what the feet per minute is, but at a nice,
Consistent
like that.
rate. Yeah.
But sometimes you have to go
A little slower.
like that, real slow, and you just have to be up for it.
Yeah.
You expect that it's going to take. But the fact is that when you're set up to cut veneer, and your saw is working well, it doesn't take much to cut up a piece of wood into veneer.
Do you ever have it's the third Thursday of the month, it's veneer day, and you set up the system and you do your show veneers, you do your extra poplar pieces that you were talking about, or is it just as needed?
Well, it's both. It's when a job needs to be done, I'll take advantage of the fact that the saw is all set up and tuned.
Okay.
And I keep that blade on there a lot. I saw Mike's video about curving a curved cut if you have a wider blade. So just how to manage tighter radius curves when you have a wider blade. And so there's really only two blades that I use at this point. One is the carbide tip for resawing, and the other is a 1/2-inch bimetal blade, also from Lennox. It's their Die Master, and that's like a 4-tooth per inch. If I had a nice small bandsaw, I would have it set up with more of a scrolling type blade, which would be nice. But I can get a lot of work done with that 1/2-inch, and the bimetal is maybe a third the price of the carbide tip, which is not that. I don't think the carbide tip ones are that expensive anyway. I mean, for my saw, my saw is a 24-inch, and the blade is under $140. And it lasts.
Do you get it sharpened?
No, I have sharpened. I have gotten it sharpened, and it's better. It costs maybe $40 to get it sharpened, but it's not as good as when it's new.
Yeah,
I've heard other people say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then the bimetal blade for me is maybe $40 or so, and you get much more longevity out of a bimetal than you do out of a carbon steel blade. So that's worth it to me.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people like the wood slicer blades. They're a thin kerf, and I'm pretty sure Lennox makes an identical product. In fact, they may make the wood slicer. Who knows? But they have a thin kerf blade that has all the same dimensional characteristics and tooth set as the other one. So I'm a big fan of Lennox.
Wow. All right. So let's take a little break because I think we're on the verge of a one question pod, which is very rare. There's a reason why Pony Jorgensen is tight with woodworkers. Their clamps are made using only the highest quality of materials, and they inspect each one to guarantee consistency and performance. That's what they mean when they say clamps without compromise. Head on over to ponyjorgensen.com to explore their wide range of pipe clamp fixtures, bar clamps, hand clamps, and more. And join their woodworking community on Instagram by following them at pony_Jorgensen. Even if you're not a professional woodworker, you want to use the glues that the pros use. And 3 out of 4 pro woodworkers trust Titebond as their glue of choice. For building wood furniture or cabinets, to making picture frames or birdhouses, or just general repairs around the house, Titebond has the widest choice of glues to help with whatever project you want to tackle. Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit titebond.com, Titebond.com, or visit them on Facebook and Instagram. Which one do you want to hit next?
I want to jump in with a question.
We have a rare echo question.
Yeah, rare question. So just to kind of completely switch gears in terms of your furniture making and the fact that you're my favorite furniture designer. I mean, it seems like a lot of the work you do are pieces that you design and build. And just to kind of preface this question, a friend of mine is a professional woodworker, and we were talking about getting an order for like 12 dining chairs. And I said, that's like my biggest nightmare because I don't want to spend all my time making the same thing over and over when I would rather be making different things. And he, as a professional, said, what are you, crazy? A 12 dining chair order is perfect because whenever I have to design something, I'm losing money, and I would rather make things that are already designed, that I've already made. So my question for you is sort of how much of the things you build are sort of original designs, and how much do you build based on pieces that you've already made before? And what do you prefer doing?
Let's see. I would say that it's shifted over the years and not in one direction. There was a time that I was doing a lot more speculative pieces for sale in galleries. When I started as a professional and had gallery connections and opportunities to showcase pieces and sell them, I was quite motivated to do that work because they were original, fun, complex, exhausting,
Yes.
often pieces. But it was a great way to stretch myself, show what I was capable of doing, have some fun, and have a realistic chance to sell them. And there are fewer galleries now than there were then. I have an affiliation with a gallery in Somesville, Maine, the gallery at Somes Sound. Tira Hansen is the owner there, and it's a great gallery. It's as nice a gallery as any that I've shown work in before. It's a great group of people that she's gathered there as furniture makers, and she's got paintings and sculpture as well. And so all my speculative work goes up there now. And because people liked my work, people asked me to make it too. So more commissioned work, I would say, in recent years. And that's partly due to demand, and partly due to kind of having more space in my in my year for doing commissioned work for people. So now it's largely commissioned pieces, but in almost all cases, they are my designs that we work through in collaboration, with the client.
Okay.
They come with an idea. Their idea may be more certain than others. Usually, they've seen a picture of something, or even just describe, what we're looking. We want it to have this kind of feel, and then I can go to my portfolio and say, well, when you talk about that, it makes me think of this detail in this piece. Okay. And so we're referencing other works that I've done and drawing often from them. But the commissioned work largely are pieces that will not be made again. Okay. Occasionally, a commission. And actually, this happens more often than when I think about it. When I'm building a commission for someone, it makes me think, oh, I like this. If I were to do it again, I would make it, these dimensions, or I would kind of approach it in this way, or do this kind of decorative work on it. And so I have a number of pieces that were originally commissioned, but then revisited as as a speculative piece.
Nice.
And I like that. That's a fun thing and it's one thing I'm thankful for in commissioned work, is that it kind of forces the thinking in a little bit different direction often.
Yeah. So
based on that.
For commissioned work, you okay an initial design with someone. How much leeway kind of do you give yourself in kind of following the path of a design as you're making it before you think it goes too far away from that original idea where you have to go back to the client? Or is it just like, nah, I'm just going to give you what I give you and you're going to like it? Like, what is that? Is there any stress involved with the commission work where you're making something for someone with certain expectations?
Yeah, almost always there's some of that. But it depends a lot on the particular client and the kind of relationship I have with them. And at this point, a lot of the people that I do work for, we've done a number of pieces already.
Okay.
So there's a comfort that allows for more kind of leeway on my part. But there's oftentimes that the piece is going in a direction, and and there may be something I would really like to do about it with it, and hope that the client agrees. Okay. So I then have to sometimes prepare something that I can show them. Okay. Whether it's drawings or a little mock-up or just a little example of a veneer pattern I'd like to do, something that I can show them and say, this is a direction I'd really love to go with this. And sometimes that can take a day, to prepare that presentation for the client, to try to kind of get them to see it my way.
Cool. So it sounds like the ideal is working with customers you've already worked with. There's a trust level and a familiarity. Unlike a brand new client, so someone calls you cold and says, I understand you make furniture, I want a table. Like, how quickly do you address how much this thing is going to cost before you start to waste too much time on a design and realize they wanted to spend $500 on a dining table?
Yeah, I try to get to that much more quickly than I used to, because I think, but not immediately. Okay. But usually, it depends a little on how they found out about me. If they were referred through someone I know, a previous client, then I'll have a better idea. Just kind of where
they're not finding you in the yellow pages, right?
No, but some people do contact me in more through direct channels.
Okay.
And
or if you see your work on Instagram, you're posting a lot. And it's like, oh, that's really beautiful. Hey, can you make me a piece of furniture?
Yeah, and I've had direct messages from people, and often they will ask about what's the price range for this, and price ranges are great because you can make that range as big as you want, and so. Usually it might be, if someone says, okay, I saw this dining table that you were making, but we're thinking we'd like to do it in walnut and can you give us an idea of what that would cost? So I can say, well, that would be between, 10 and 15,000 for that table. So that gives enough of a leeway that they might be a $10,000 table client, which is great because I can do that for them. So try to get to the numbers as soon as possible, but leave some flexibility.
Okay.
Well, and you've been doing this a while, so you know about what a dining room table of, if somebody says they want a trestle table, that you know about what that is going to cost at the end of the day. Somebody starting off, that's a hard thing, pricing yourself.
The common question is, someone asked me to make this, how much should I charge? And that's a little bit of a red flag because it means, well, you haven't probably made that before. So,
and I've... I haven't necessarily made that before is like every project I do, for better or worse, but it's true because, each one, if you haven't made it before, then there's many aspects of the design process that you're going to have to engage in. Even though but you're right, Ben. I think at this point, a certain type of piece of furniture, a table, for instance, of certain dimensions, of a certain style, you can get the range probably a lot closer.
It's when you're designing something, you probably know the hurdles that you're setting out in front of you, So you could probably say, okay, I'm doing this wacky thing here and I'm going to do a veneer. I need to, gauge that. You're probably not starting a project that winds up taking twice as long as you thought it would, right?
No, not twice as long. Yeah. 4 times, 5 times, maybe. No, but it's those hurdles you talk about. I used to run track in high school and college, and in college I did the steeplechase, and the steeplechase is 3,000 meter race, and they've got barriers, hurdle type barriers around the track, and one of those barriers has 12 feet of water in front of it that you have to kind of step off of the barrier and leap over. Well, those hurdles don't, they're solid. They don't tip over if you hit them. And that's what projects are like sometimes. They're hurdles, but they don't always tip over. And so you smack into them. And even though you know that the hurdles are there, you hit them hard. And so it's surprises, that's all. It's the things, even though you know that this is the work involved in this. Optimism is a great thing, and it's how most of us start our projects, with a lot of optimism. And so you tend to underestimate certain challenges, and when you actually get there, they can be more complicated than you thought. You have an idea of how you're going to address this, but when you actually get there, this way didn't work as well as I thought it would.
Sometimes it's part of the fun of it, though.
Sure, it is.
I made the mistake of I was going to say that my smooth move this week was telling a friend that she texted me with some hanger that she goes, "How would I make this?" And it was a dowel cut at an angle with a notch in it, and it was one of those, Amber, that's going to be a lot harder to make than you might think. Let me just make it for you. And then I looked at what the guy was charging. It was very reasonably priced for what was going on. But for some reason, this project, it was only an hour and a half, but it kicked my butt because it was, getting everything lined up perfectly on a dowel. So it was like this notch needed to be 90 degrees to that, which was cut at 10 degrees. And it was one of those projects that sneakily kicked my butt. And I got done an hour and a half later and was like, these stupid things took me an hour and a half. And the whole time I was sitting there going, wait, I need a jig to hold this thing at this angle and I need this. But that was the fun of it, was trying to figure out how the hell I was going to make this thing and do it accurately at the level I want my work to be. And now I want to chamfer this at 45 degrees. Well, I don't want to chuck it up on the lathe. I want to, so I took it over the disc sander and a V-block. And, it just, if everything went perfectly as planned, would woodworking be anywhere near as fun as it is?
Yeah.
More fun, most likely.
Yeah, more.
Really? Well, maybe that's all I have is trying to figure out my way. Trying to figure ways out of issues, So
sort of along those lines, Tim, obviously I'm asking all these questions because you do this professionally. This is how you make a living. When you sort of find yourself down the road in the middle of a project, are you conscious of, well, I'm getting paid this much, so I can't invest more hours than this in it? Or once you hit go and start on a project, that goes by the wayside, and you're just focused on making the piece the way it should be made?
I would say generally the latter.
Okay.
But I know that going into it. I know that just because of my historic record that I'm going to do what it takes to get it done properly. That said, there are, and this is something I've been trying to remind myself a lot lately. If the customer didn't ask for this, why am I doing it? Why the customer didn't ask to put shop-sawn veneer on the backside of this, back panel for this cabinet, but it's probably the right way to do it, so I'm going to do it. But they didn't ask me to do it,
so you're on Tim time at that point.
Yeah. But part of that is also just knowing what the right way is to do it, and knowing that you are going to do that, and trying to price it in such a way that really allows for that.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, I told we had you prepare for. Is there an all-time favorite tool or something? I think we should just let you say what you want to say for whatever. And this has been incredible. Do you have a tool or a technique you want to talk about, or anything that's been? What are you working on right now?
I'm working on this dining table, which is made of sapele. It is for a longtime client who has a lot of my pieces, and this is for. They have a home in Buffalo, New York, and they have one in Sarasota, Florida, and so the Sarasota home is actually a new condo. They moved out of one and into this new place, and it has a very well lit. There's a kind of a real Asian aesthetic to the furnishings and the just the whole feel of the place. This table is 6.5 feet long and 4 feet wide, so it's on the wide side for a dining table. Usually you're more like 40 to 46 at the most for a table of this length. I proposed something that had very spare lines, and what that meant in a table this size, and no lower stretchers or any kind of structure down closer to the floor. So a lot depends on the strength of the corner joint of the table, and because of the Asian aesthetic, the three-way miter type of joint at the way the leg and the aprons come together made a lot of sense, and just it was appealing to me, especially because of some of the shaping that happens in the leg. But making one of those joints, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make it, and I've done some projects on a smaller scale that use that type of joint, and the way you create tenons and bring the joint together can be really tricky, and there are some very traditional Chinese ways of creating that joint. But for this table, I wanted something really strong, and this is getting into this week's or this month's smooth move for me. This corner joint, it appears as it's sitting right next to me. I should just swivel the computer around, and it has two side-by-side tenons that come in to the. Stay right there.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, so you have a twin tenon,
that's what it
and
looks
then
like on the outside.
a mitered bridle joint. That's
basically.
It's a double tenon with a mite.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, weird.
So the tenons, come into the leg square, and you can go really deep, but it appears as a miter on the outside, and that wing, that mitered wing also is a glue face.
Yeah.
For any audio only listeners, I'll put this up on the show notes page.
Yeah, we're actually really familiar with this joint, Tim, because a bunch of us on staff have been following your posts on Instagram and talking about it. I don't know if you've heard from Barry yet. Barry's like, I send this to Barry. Barry says, "Do you think this is an article?" Yeah, this is an article. Talk to Tim, and then Tom McKenna will, he'll forward me your post and say, "Have you seen this?" It's like, "Oh yes, we've seen this." So, speaking of an article coming out of a podcast, hopefully that's something you might be willing to. I won't put you on the spot now and ask if you'll do it, but hopefully that's something you might consider throwing in the magazine, because that's pretty swell.
Yeah, well, thanks. No, I would love to. It's definitely not easy, and there's I learned a few things from it that I would do a little differently.
Cool.
But one favorite tool that is really important in creating that is my table saw blade that I use, which is a flat top grind, so that the profile of the tooth, it's a ripping blade. It's a heavy duty ripping blade.
Okay.
And so that allows, when you're, using that to cut your tenons, you can go right down to the line,
Cool.
and it leaves a flat bottom.
Is that big Freud blade with that kind of overly wide curve?
It's a Mana,
Okay.
but it's probably similar to the Freud. It is a thicker is a thicker curve, and I can't remember how many teeth. Not that many.
Right.
Like a 12th tooth or something like that.
Wow.
So, but it's a great blade. And
Oh, cool.
Wow. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to get that going. What was the smooth move? Just designing yourself into this corner of trying to figure it out?
Well, coming up with it in the first place. And I love joinery that allows for kind of slender parts, but a lot of strength.
Yeah.
Because a lot of my designs tend to go in that direction, and I love joinery. I think it's this great thing that most people don't see, except for Instagram now, which is nice. That's where people get to see the joinery now.
Yeah.
Because
Do you point your clients to your Instagram page so they can sort of keep up with how their projects are going along?
I do, and typically I'll create a unique hashtag, which serves as kind of my folder.
Okay.
So I'll come up with a hashtag that's unique to that person or project.
Oh, cool.
And so every time I post, and there's someone else could post in that using that hashtag, but it's
Dear listeners, do not do this.
Well, they have to know what the hashtag is. No, so
everyone can see it. Huh. Well, that's
no, and I mean, Instagram for me is that is a part of it, is helping me to be kind of organized with documenting projects, and being able to access that information easily. So the hashtags are really, really useful for that.
Cool.
I think Mike has pivoted it into 2 books by now. So, I mean...
Yeah, just collect it all and then just print it, call it a book.
Wait a minute. I have a book here.
I'm really appreciative for you posting the process of your work, Tim, because your final pieces are gorgeous, but a lot of times it's so far, like I'll look at it and appreciate it, but it's so far removed from how I would think about making it that it's almost kind of puts it out of reach. But to watch you go through the process, it isn't like, oh, well, he's just doing that's easier than I thought. But I have a, like you said, you see all the joinery in there. I have a greater appreciation for what's going into this design, but I also get to see those steps from the design to the mock-up to the joinery to the building to give me, a better understanding of, wow, that's how you make super cool stuff. So that's really cool. Thanks for doing that.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And, I'm really happy to hear that, because I do put a lot of time into it, actually, and I kind of gravitated towards more video content and piecing together videos from lots of clips, and this current project, I've got a lot of footage, but most of it still needs to be kind of edited and posted. But I've just been firing away on this project too, and trying to possibly get it ready to drive down to Sarasota. But have to do that on my wife's vacation, her school vacation. It's funny. I mean, she drives a school bus during the school year, and on her vacation, she wants to drive to Florida. So talk about a bus person's holiday.
Well, I think we should start to wrap it up. I have a random recommendation, which ties into Tim's work nicely. It was on a video that you had posted. I think I saw it on your YouTube channel, which is great as well. It's short clips again, but I have always been a fan of J.J. Johnson, and you had a video. You were finishing something or something.
Yes,
and you had Carolyn in the Morning playing, and that was the record Heroes was totally off my radar. I actually pulled out my phone and Shazammed your video and found the track, and great record. So J.J. Johnson, he's a trombone player who I've always loved, but there's more J.J. Johnson out there. that I needed to know, and Tim Coleman helped me with that.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's a wonderful album.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Heroes. It's so good. Glad you picked up on that.
Yeah. Anybody else have random things to bring up?
Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. I recommend that. It's really good.
All right.
Yeah, about half of a meeting between Tom and Mike yesterday was talking about
Yes.
this cut.
Yeah. At 4 hours long, it's definitely worth the viewing. Break it up. Watch it over a couple nights. It's fine.
Tim, do you have anything? What's in the record player right now? What's in the CD player?
Mine?
Yeah.
Let's see, Jaco Pastorius. There's an anthology that I've been listening to, and sometimes certain projects get one or maybe two CDs that just seem to be, stuck in there, for the whole project. And
That's awesome.
And I can think back to certain projects and which soundtrack there was for it. But yeah, for some reason it's I don't I'll get really in a groove with one one or two CDs, and so it might be in there for a month or two.
Wow, cool.
So yeah, there's I listen to a fair amount of jazz, and there's a place in southern Vermont called the Vermont Jazz Center in Brattleboro, and they've been around for a long time, and they get top-notch performers coming up there. And they haven't been able to have people in-house for the last year or so, but they've been doing some streaming shows.
Oh, cool.
But I've been introduced to just a lot of amazing music through them. And there was a trombone player, and I can't remember his name, but he was performing there. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, you got to listen to J.J. Johnson." So that's where that came from.
Nice. Brattleboro, Vermont, the home of the SD organ. All the pump organs in the world came out of Brattleboro, Vermont.
That's right. Yep. A lot of those SD buildings still exist.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I have to wander up that way. I've had a few, and there's always Brattleboro, Vermont, right there. There's your randomness. All right, well, that's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. 3 years later, we'll have Tim Coleman answer one of them over the course of an episode. If you're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. Check out Tim's Instagram. Check out his YouTube, too. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening.
If you love this podcast, you'll love Find Woodworking Unlimited. Access more than 40 years of articles, how-to videos, and project plans designed to take your craft to the next level. Check it out.
You there, Tim?
Well, I've lost you guys.
I thought you pissed him off.
I know, I did too.
All right. He's frozen.